like, comment, and subscribe for more content.
What's up, guys? Welcome to this edition of a Funko podcast. I'm DK Wrestler.
And this is Michael Jackson. Just kidding. It's MD Shady.
And today is our latest fandom-related podcast. And it's on The Office, actually. And more specifically, as voted by our followers on Instagram, the title of this podcast is Bears, Beets, Battlestar Galactica, The Office podcast. I know you're probably thinking, why didn't you go with That's What She Said? But That's What She Said is probably said for everything related to The Office, and we just wanted to go something a little different. Plus, our good friends at K-Dog and Fish already used That's What She Said for their Office podcast, so I'm like, you know what? Let's just stay away from that. I like Bears Beets Battlestar Galactica a little better anyways. But for today's podcast, obviously, if you stumble upon this podcast because you are a fan of The Office, that's great. If you stumbled upon here because you're a regular viewer of our podcast, that's still great. But if it's both meshed together, it's going to be a great time here today. So I should also mention, if somehow there is a New York Comic-Con exclusive Office Pop that gets announced, we won't be talking about that because we're in the end of August right now, and New York Comic-Con Pops, obviously, at this time of recording, haven't been announced yet. So anyways, without further ado, I will kick off by saying The Office. So the first episode had aired March 24th, 2005, and the series finale happened on May 16th, 2013. And so I'm going to give a little plot as provided by a user on IMDb. So the everyday lives of workers at a paper company are caught on camera by a camera crew for a documentary. Some of these workers are Michael Scott, the boss who isn't too bright or funny; Dwight Schrute, a salesman who takes his job very, very seriously; Jim Halpert, a salesman who is the office cool guy and prankster; and Pam Beesly, the receptionist who is engaged, but who is also the crush of someone else in the office. With these characters, the daily antics of this branch is anything but normal. As terms to the Funko Pops and everything is, we're going to divide everything into seasons. So obviously we're going to discuss all 9 seasons, and the pops that kind of go with each season that we have arranged it as was more of how the pop is itself, rather than what I originally was going to do is just go by the quote. But a lot of the characters, actually, if you have the Office Pops and you know they have the quotes in the back, a lot of them are just quotes that like the character regularly says. It's not like an episode oriented quote. Example, so we'll talk about season 1 right now, which obviously season 1 aired March 24th, 2005 and ended on April 26th, 2005, in which we're also going to give kind of a summary. A lot of this was provided by Wikipedia on what had happened in the season, which season 1, there was the threat of the company-wide downsizing at Dunder Mifflin, the friendship between Jim Halpert and Pam Beesly, and then the Scranton branch's hiring of a temp, as in Ryan Howard, which obviously there isn't much detail for season 1 because there was 6 episodes in season 1, since I think they were trying to go with whatever they were doing for The Office UK, which actually only had 6 episodes in the first season also, and then 8 in the second. So they were kind of going that route. But obviously the show got so popular that they had ended up making it a series with over 20 episodes each season. So the first pop we're actually going to talk about, and might as well kick off with this, is the Michael Scott pop, which obviously this pop is definitely supposed to be for the pilot episode. The quote on the box of Michael Scott's pop says, "That's what she said," which this is an example of some characters that it's not so episode oriented, but it's more of a known quote for that character. So obviously they had to have put "That's what she said." And then we'll explain our opinions of the pops after we mention the pops for each season. So obviously, like I had mentioned, this is definitely towards the first episode because he is holding the world's best boss mug, which is seen actually also, if you watch the trailer on Netflix, it actually shows the scene where Michael's explaining why people think he is the best boss, and then he ends up showing his world's best boss mug. The next pop is the Dwight Schrute with the stapler that goes also with the pilot episode for the first season, in which the quote on Dwight with the Jeller staplers box is, "That's real professional. Thanks. This is the 3rd time, and it wasn't funny the first 2 times either, Jim." Obviously, in this scene, this is where it kicks off the ever so popular feud between Jim Halpert and Dwight, when Jim pranks Dwight by putting his stapler in Jell-O. It's such a funny scene. And then we'll move on to the Dwight Schrute with blonde hair pop, which this pop was actually a Target exclusive, a part of a Pop and Tea bundle. This pop is supposed to be part of the episode 4 titled The Alliance. So the quote that's on this pop is, "You couldn't handle my undivided attention," which I don't think was a quote in this episode. For this specific scene for this pop, Jim and Dwight briefly form an alliance, and Jim pranks Dwight by telling him that the CIA needs him to go undercover by dyeing his hair blonde. And then the last pop that we're going to talk about for season 1, and it goes with this, is the Daryl Philbin pop, which this goes along with the episode titled Basketball. And the quote on this pop is, "I'm hot, you're hot, let's get poppin'," which was actually a quote that Daryl used in season 8. This is for the episode, like I said, it's titled Basketball, where the office workers and the warehouse workers play a game of basketball where the losing team must work on Saturday. The Michael Scott pop, really cool. It's simplistic, but that's all it needs to be. The world's best boss mug, sweet. Love that they added that. The Dwight with the Jell-O stapler pop, really cool itself. It's cool that Funko had made a pop of this scene because, like I said, it really kicked off that ever so awesome feud between Jim Halpert and Dwight Schrute and how they kind of get right into each other's throats throughout the series, and it's so awesome. The Dwight with blonde hair, it's all right for the simple fact that all it is like the normal Dwight pop, which we will be mentioning later on, but with blonde hair. There wasn't really much of a mold change. I think the only thing was just a paint job. They just made the hair blonde, and that's about it. And then the Daryl, I think this is a good Daryl pop. Like, I don't know how many Daryls they can actually pull off in the future for the Office lineup.
Yeah, like you said, the Michael Scott is kind of simplistic, and that's kind of all it needs to be, especially for just this version of Michael. It does really make a lot of sense that they did "That's What She Said" on the box, but I really think it should have been like his opening words basically in The Office, where he says, "Some people would say I'm the best boss," and then the rest of the things that he says. It could have been one of those quotes on the boxes where it's like a pretty long quote, and I think that would have been very cool as well, but it's a pretty decent pop. The Dwight Schrute with the Jell-O stapler. Oh, this is hilarious. I love this pop. So funny and such a great scene, and really shows you exactly how the series is going to play out, especially with Jim and Dwight's relationship. And then exactly going on to the next pop where he has his hair dyed blonde. This pop's pretty funny too. I thought that was such a great moment in The Office and just so funny. Their relationship in The Office just is so great, and it gets better and better as the seasons go on. The Daryl pop is actually one of my favorite Office pops. I love the character, and I think they did a really, really good job on this pop. There's a lot of detail with the texture in the hair, and then obviously on his outfit, he has like the Dunder Mifflin patch, his name patch, and then since it says "Game at 1 p.m." on the clipboard, that just makes this pop so much better because that is an amazing episode of The Office.
All right, so now we're going to move on to season 2, which is basically how we're doing this podcast because technically this week does mark when season 2 actually began 15 years ago. This week, as you guys are listening to this podcast, which season 2 had aired September 20th, 2005 and ended May 11th, 2006. And a summary of what happened in season 2, the continuing company-wide threat of downsizing, Michael Scott's relationship with his superior Jan Levinson, Jim Halpert's feelings towards Pam Beesly blooming into a romance as she prepares for her wedding, Dwight Schrute's new romance with accountant Angela Martin, Dunder Mifflin's hire of new CFO David Wallace, Ryan Howard's on-again, off-again romance with customer service rep Kelly Kapoor, and Phyllis Lappin's romance with Bob Vance of Vance Refrigeration. For pop-wise now, we're going to kick off by talking about Pam Beesly. The pop is definitely directed towards the episode The Dundies, which is the first episode of season 2. And the quote on the box is, "Dunder Mifflin, this is Pam," which is just an obvious quote for Pam. Because what else really are you going to say with Pam? I mean, I'm sure you could have done like an actual episode-oriented quote, but I mean, they might as well just have "Dunder Mifflin, this is Pam." But yes, this definitely is towards the Dundies episode because she is wearing her whitest sneakers. We move on to the 3-hole punch Jim. So this was a Funko Shop exclusive and currently is the most expensive Funko Pop in the entire lineup. I think it's close to $180 Canadian. This is from episode 5 titled Halloween. And the quote on the box is, I'm a 3-hole punch version of Jim, because you can have me either way, plain white Jim or 3-hole punch. And obviously in this episode, this is one of Jim's famous Halloween costumes, because he doesn't really put much effort into his Halloween costumes, where he's basically wearing a white dress shirt with 3 black dots to portray a piece of paper. And the workers at the office are just loving the costume over Dwight's $150 Dark Lord costume, which I guess that moves on now to the Dwight as Dark Lord Funko Pop, which was part of one of the newest sets made this year. And this is a specialty series exclusive, also a part of that episode of Halloween, in which the quote on the box is, "Tell him, not Dwight, tell him to stop. Quiet you, make him be quiet." This scene is more towards where Dwight is in Michael's office. Obviously, he's dressed up as a Dark Lord from Star Wars, and Michael is messing with Dwight by listening to what the other head on Michael's costume is saying. And then the last pop to actually talk about for season 2 at this point is the Dwight Schrute with the bobblehead pop, which this was a New York Comic Con 2019 shared with Amazon exclusive, in which this was a part of episode 16 titled Valentine's Day. And the quote on the box is, "It's me, I'm a bobblehead." This is where obviously Dwight Schrute receives a bobblehead from Angela as a gift for Valentine's Day. The Pam pop, it's a good pop, honestly. And I think, obviously, like the Michael one, it's like simple, but that's all it needs to be. And I think this is just a perfect Pam pop because she's got her normal attire that she usually wears. And they added the whitest sneakers, which I think is a great touch to the pop. The 3-hole punch Jim, arguably one of the best Jim Halpert pops, and it's one of the best Jim Halpert scenes. I do own this pop. I got it for obviously not retail, but at an eBay price that was a little expensive at the time, but it has definitely doubled since I had purchased it. Making pops like this is just so awesome for Jim because that's what Jim is. He's a funny guy. He's not supposed to be this normal office worker that you usually see. Dark Lord Dwight, this is a pretty cool pop. I kind of wish that they actually had the lightsaber with him, but I don't know if it possibly was like an issue with Star Wars themselves. Then like maybe if they added a lightsaber, that would mean that like Dwight would have to be a bobblehead because of the fact that like all Star Wars pops per se have to be bobbleheads due to licensing issues. It's not really one of my favorite Dwights, but it's still pretty cool that they ended up making this as a pop. And then the Dwight with the bobblehead, really, really cool. I think a lot of people wish that the tiny bobblehead that he's holding actually bobbled, but that'd be a lot more work to have this tiny spring. I'm fine, obviously, with just the head just staying the way it is, but it's cool that they ended up making a pop like this.
The Pam pop is another simplistic pop, but again, that's all it really needs to be, and having the whitest sneakers on there is just funny, and obviously if you're a big fan of the show, you would realize that that's what she's wearing, and it just makes the pop 10 times better. It's so great. 3-hole punch Jim is an amazing pop. It's one of my favorite pops from the lineup, and I love this pop. I loved the moment. I wish I would have jumped on buying it a little bit earlier. I don't own it, but I wish I would have bought it when you bought it because it definitely has appreciated in value over time. The last time I checked it was just a couple days ago, and it was like $186 Canadian on the Funko app, which is crazy, but that also makes me want it even more because it has some value. The Dwight as Dark Lord is a funny pop, but it's one that I don't really care too much about. I don't really know why, because normally this should be right up my alley, but for some reason it's just not one of my favorite pops. The Dwight with the bobblehead is really cool, and yeah, if they would have made the little bobblehead bobble, that would have been so cool, but that definitely would have been kind of expensive in a way to do, and just kind of a pain for them, so it makes sense that they didn't do it, but it's definitely an alright pop. I would agree to that.
All right, moving on to season 3 of The Office, which had aired September 21st, 2006, and ended May 17th, 2007. What a great season this was, actually, season 3. But anyways, the summary of season 3, we have Jim Halpert's transfer from Dunder Mifflin Scranton to Stamford, Michael Scott's up and down relationship with Jan Levinson, the introduction of Stamford-based employees Andrew Bernard, or Andy Bernard, I should say, and Karen Filippelli, Pam Beasley calling off her wedding to Roy Anderson, the closing of the Stamford branch and subsequent merger with Scranton, Jim's new romance with Karen, Ryan Howard's promotion to salesman, Dwight Schrute competing with Andy to be Michael's right-hand man, Michael unintentionally outing gay employee Oscar Martinez, and then David Wallace's search for a new vice president of sales. So the first pop that we're going to discuss about this, because it goes in order from the episode Initiation, which is episode 5, according to Netflix, is the GameStop exclusive Stanley Hudson with the pretzel. And the quote on this box says, "I wake up every morning in a bed that's too small, drive my daughter to a school that's too expensive, and then I go to work to a job for which I get paid too little, but on pretzel day, well, I like pretzel day." Obviously, this episode, it's pretzel day, where once a year inside the building where Dunder Mifflin is, there's always free pretzels. So you go and get a free pretzel and you can get whatever toppings you have. And like I said, it only happens once a year. So that's why Stanley is so excited for this day. And then the next pop is the Andy Bernard pop. This was a Target exclusive, and this is with the merger episode, which is episode 8. And the quote on this box is "Rid-it-did-do," which is just a normal Andy Bernard quote, which is perfectly fine with me. And for this specific scene-oriented pop, Andy asks Jim for advice on what Pam's interests are, and Jim gives him all of the wrong answers, including, I'm pretty sure one of them was that Pam liked country music and banjos. So then that's how you see Andy playing the banjo for the first time in the office. And involved in that same episode of the merger, but actually was shown in, I guess, a better quality in season 6, is one of the recently announced pops coming up very soon, and that is the FYE exclusive Scranton Boys 2-pack. For these new pops, actually, throughout this podcast, I'm actually going to guess what quote is going to be on the box, which I had put down for this one, that I think it's simply just going to be Scranton, what? The Electric City. And I think that's all it's going to say. But if somehow they were able to put up like the majority of the lyrics on that flap, that would be nuts. But obviously this scene is a music video, essentially, of Michael Scott and Dwight Schrute rapping about the city of Scranton, Pennsylvania, and how great it is. The next pop is actually from the episode after the merger, titled The Convict, from episode 9. And this pop is Prison Mike. The quote on this pop is, "Gruel sandwiches, gruel omelets, nothing but gruel. Plus, you can eat your own hair." And obviously in this episode, Michael Scott impersonates a convict by telling everyone what life is like in prison due to one of the new workers being an ex-convict. Then we fast forward to a few episodes later, more specifically the episode called Cocktails, where at the beginning it brings this pop, which is the Michael Scott in Straight Jacket, which is one of the upcoming pops. But I think the quote that's going to be used for this pop will be, "I cannot tell you how I plan to escape other than by using magic. That is the magician's code." This obviously would be Michael putting on the straight jacket and trying to escape, but he is just really unsuccessful. He has like the key in his mouth, but it drops, and then Jim finds it and just like stands on it without him knowing. And then, Michael is just trying to get out of this jacket, and now he can't. Next two pops, they go hand in hand with the same episode 20, titled Product Recall, and that is Jim Halpert as Dwight Schrute, which this was a box lunch exclusive. The quote on this box is, "Last week I was in a drugstore and I saw these glasses. $4. And it only cost me $7 to recreate the rest of the ensemble. And that's a grand total of $11. So obviously Jim shows up at the beginning of this episode to work, dressing up as Dwight and impersonating him. He even goes as far as setting up his own bobblehead, which utters the famous Dwight line, "Identity theft is not a joke, Jim. Millions of families suffer every year." But the last pop for season 3 that I added on here, because it's almost identical, obviously, the Dwight Schrute common pop from the very first wave, in which the quote on here is, "Nothing stresses me out except having to seek the approval of my inferiors," which actually that was a quote from season 5. So obviously, once again, it's a pop of a character with a quote that like isn't episode oriented. It's more of a famous quote that he said throughout the series. So we got the Stanley pop, which, oh my God, Stanley overall in The Office is such an underrated character. I don't think a lot of people talk about him. And this one definitely has to be the best Stanley pop. And I don't know how many Stanley pops are going to be better than this one. It's so awesome. The Andy Bernard pop, which Andy, such an awesome character. He's actually probably in like the top 3 or top 5 like favorite characters of mine throughout the series. This pop is just so good. He has the banjo, which totally makes sense because he plays the banjo throughout the series, and it's so awesome. And this is a pop I still need to get in my collection, and I wish I had it. The Scranton Boys 2-pack, oh my God. I mentioned a few weeks back on one of our episodes of the Funko Podcast, whenever this pop got announced, that this is such an amazing 2-pack. So much detail for just some human pops, especially Michael with his like sweater that he's got going on, and it says Scranton, Pennsylvania on it. And it's kind of like a Christmas sweater. And like Dwight with his hands, like the way they aren't just beside each other. The Prison Mike pop, Prison Mike is definitely, in my opinion, like Michael Scott's best like persona throughout the series. I think it was so awesome, especially, and I kind of wish this was the quote on the box, but it wasn't, was the quote about the Dementors. You know, they'd be sucking the soul right out of you. I wish that was the quote. This, I feel, is more Michael Scott than the original one is, because the original one is more of like a simplistic human pop, but this one, you look at it and it's like, yeah, that's Michael Scott right there. Prison Mike. So awesome. One of my favorite pops in the Office lineup. The straight jacket one, that's pretty funny. I wasn't really expecting this for a future pop. It's not one of like the first scenes I think of in my head, but obviously I can't wait to get this. And I can't wait to see how many quotes that I predict today end up being right. Then we got the Jim Halpert as Dwight, which is my absolute favorite pop and favorite scene of The Office. So awesome. And a lot of people were complaining last year when this got released how this basically looks exactly like Dwight, but isn't that the point? Like, Jim's supposed to be impersonating Dwight. You can tell that this is Jim because every Dwight pop has squinted eyes and the Jim pops don't. So especially with the way the eyebrows are, it's like, yep, that's Jim, and his hair is like Dwight's. And it was great that this pop was made, and I can't believe that I have this in my collection. I'm glad that I have this in my collection. And then the normal Dwight Schrute pop, arguably one of, if not the best Office pop. It is probably like the most perfect human pop that Funko has made. Like, you look at this without even having to look at the box, and it's like, yeah, that is Rainn Wilson. That's Dwight Schrute.
Stanley on Pretzel Day. It's a great episode. I thought it was hilarious because it's cool when some like new things at work kind of happen, or like reoccurring things that only happen once a year. And this pop looks amazing. Of course, there's like the crossword puzzle in his hand, and then the pretzel looks really good. But I really love the way that the eyes look and just the whole face in general. It's just a very, very well done pop, and it looks a lot like Stanley Hudson. The Andy Bernard pop is also amazing. It's one of my favorite pops because Andy is one of my favorite characters. The banjo is really cool, and I think that Funko should do more Andy pops because I think he deserves it. The Scranton Boys, oh, super hyped when this got announced. This is going to be such a great 2-pack, and I can't wait to own it. The Dwight, I think, looks so awesome with the orange hat. It just really looks like a beanie on his head, which is so great. And then, yeah, like you said, with Michael's shirt that he has underneath his jacket where it says the Electric City, Scranton, Pennsylvania. Such great detail. Both pops look amazing. And honestly, this is like one of my favorite 2-packs ever. The Prison Mike pop is also a really good pop, and I would agree with you that it does look more Michael Scott than the original Michael Scott. Yeah, I agree with the Dementors thing. I wish that the quote in the box just said, the worst part about prison was the Dementors, because that'd be hilarious. The Michael Scott in the straight jacket, that's also a funny pop. And yeah, it's like you said, like I didn't really expect to see this. I figured we'd be getting fresh characters rather than more Michaels at this time, but it is a really cool pop either way. And I totally agree with some people saying the Jim Halpert as Dwight looks like Dwight. But yeah, like you said, that's what it's supposed to look like. And there are some key details where you can kind of tell that it's Jim rather than Dwight. One, I'm pretty sure the color of his skin is just slightly more pale, and his nose is bigger, whereas on the Dwight pops, he has sort of like a button nose. And then, like you mentioned, the eyebrows are definitely a lot different, and it is a very great pop. The Dwight itself, yeah, I would agree with you. It is one of the best human pops because it looks great and you can tell who it is. So that's really, really good.
Yeah, I should have mentioned also, I forgot to mention for the Jim pop that I feel like, why didn't they take the advantage to write Bears Beets Battlestar Galactica as the quote of the box instead of that long, long quote? I mean, the quote's still cool, but like it would have been awesome to have Bears Beets Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so now we'll move on to season 4 of The Office, which aired September 27th, 2007 and ended May 15th, 2008. The summary for the season: Jim Halpert and Pam Beesly starting their romantic relationship Ryan Howard's promotion to a corporate position, Michael Scott's deteriorating relationship with Jan Levinson and his subsequent search for a new love interest, Dwight Schrute's breakup with Angela Martin after he kills one of her cats, Andy Bernard's pursuing of Angela, unaware of her lingering feelings for Dwight, Toby Flenderson moving to Costa Rica, leading to the arrival of new HR rep Holly Flax. All right, so the first pop to discuss is the Angela Martin pop. That is a EB Games / GameStop exclusive, a part of the newer set of The Office, in which this is based off of the first episode of season 4, which is Fun Run. The quote on the box is, "I actually look forward to performance reviews. I did the youth beauty pageant circuit, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. I really enjoyed being judged. I believe I hold up very well to even severe scrutiny." That was actually a quote in season 2, but once again, this is a pop for just a random quote that she says, but we put it in season 4 because of Sprinkles that she's holding, because I think the only time that Sprinkles is mentioned in The Office is in that episode when Sprinkles gets killed, if I'm not mistaken. Angela tells Dwight to go to her house to give Sprinkles her medicine in the episode, but Dwight ends up putting Sprinkles in her freezer and killing her. The next pop, a couple episodes later for this season, the episode titled Survivor Man. It is Michael Scott as Survivor, and the quote on the box is, "Well, if you look at this, I've tented my pants. I've made myself a nice pants tent shelter." In which, obviously, this episode, Michael goes out to a forest to prove that he can survive out in the wilderness like the people on the Survivor Man TV show can. And then 2 episodes later for this next pop, specifically titled Dinner Party, we have the upcoming Jan Levinson with Wine and Candle pop, which the quote, I couldn't really think of a quote because of the fact that I feel like with this pop, they're just going to end up throwing in like a random quote that Jan says throughout the series. But I went episode oriented for this one, and I wrote, "I'm so sorry that I don't want to bring kids into this screwed up world." And I put that as the quote. But obviously in this episode, Michael and Jan host a dinner party that has Jim, Pam, Angela and Andy's there, and then Dwight ends up kind of crashing the party later on, but it becomes very, very awkward in that scene. And then the last pop for this season that we'll talk about is the Toby versus Michael 2-pack, a part of the very first wave of Office pops that were released last year. The very last episode, episode 14, titled Goodbye Toby, in which the quote in here is, "I hate so much about the things you choose to be." Obviously, in this episode, Toby Flenderson spends his last day before he moves to Costa Rica. Michael gives Toby a rock with a sticky note that says "suck on this" as a going away present. The Angela pop is pretty cool. I love how they ended up having Sprinkles, because I feel like it wouldn't be as good of a pop, in my opinion, if they didn't have Sprinkles with her, especially as a singles pop, because I feel the next time they probably will do an Angela pop, in my opinion, is some way in a 2-pack with Dwight. But this is a good way to make an Angela single pop, though. The Michael Scott as Survivor is really cool, too. He's got the tripod with the camera attached to it, which I think is so funny. I feel like, though, the quote could have been a little bit better. I feel like there was a couple quotes he said that were a little better, but I'm obviously fine with that one. The Jan pop, it's cool that they made Jan. And then the 2-pack for Toby versus Michael. Now, the Michael pop from earlier, the very first Michael Scott, I felt like that should have been in this 2-pack. And if they wanted to go an actual episode-oriented pop, this would be the actual Michael Scott outfit from season 1, because he wasn't wearing the actual jacket in the first episode while he's discussing why people think he's the best boss, and then holds up the world's best boss mug. But I do love how they incorporated Toby in a 2-pack with Michael. People want a normal Toby pop by itself, but like, how many moments has Toby really had by himself? Not really many. The Toby pop, really cool. And I love how they have the "suck on this" rock with the elastic band around it. Really, really nice.
The Angela pop is great. It is one of my favorite pops because I think that she really needed a pop. When the first couple waves came out, I was like, okay, we need an Angela for sure. I do like her character and her kind of romance that she has with Dwight. And it's so cool that they added Sprinkles. Obviously, they kind of needed to, because if they didn't, and you look at this pop, it would be just like another female human character pop where you don't know that it's Angela, but since she has the cat, you can totally tell that it's her. The Michael Scott, what is this one called? Michael Scott in...
It's as Survivor.
As Survivor, okay, yes. This pop is hilarious. It's kind of weird. If you haven't seen the episode, he almost looks like a painter or something, like an artist in this, because it looks like he's kind of wearing like a beret and he has like an art easel. But if you have seen the episode, obviously he's got like his jacket and his pants are all cut up and wrapped around his head. And it was such a funny episode. I loved that episode a lot, and I really do like this pop. The Jan pop, this was kind of surprising that this was coming out. I think they could have done different characters first before doing Jan, but she definitely does need a pop, so it's good to see that she has one now. Now, the Toby versus Michael 2-pack. This is another great 2-pack. I love these Office 2-packs. They're done so well. The Toby looks really, really good. It looks just like him, which is funny. The Suck on This Rock is also a very good touch. One of the best things about this pop, honestly, and I think this is the reason why they did the Michael without his jacket on, is because he's wearing that watch that he ends up giving to Toby. I think, what is it? Because he's trying to, like, impress Jan, so he,
No, that was because Holly's there. So
Oh, right, because Holly's there, yes. He's trying to impress Holly, and he ends up giving the watch away to Toby, which was a great moment. So they really did a great job in this 2-pack.
All right, so moving on now to season 5 of The Office, which began September 25th, 2008, and ended May 14th, 2009. The kind of summary to season 5: Jim Halpert's engagement to Pam Beesly, Michael's relationship with HR rep Holly Flax, which ends when Holly is transferred to Nashua, the Scranton branch returns of Ryan Howard and Toby Flenderson, Pam going to art school in New York City, Angela's continuing affair with Dwight Schrute despite her being engaged to Andy Bernard, the arrival of no-nonsense corporate employee Charles Miner to Scranton, Michael quitting Dunder Mifflin to form his own paper company, the Michael Scott Paper Company, Pam and Ryan joining Michael in his new venture, and then the hiring of Kelly, also known as Aaron Hannon, as the new Scranton branch receptionist. So the pops that we're going to discuss for season 5 portion, there's actually quite a bit, actually. The first one involving in episode 2, which is part 2 of Weight Loss, the GameStop exclusive Michael Clump, which is going to be a part of the newer wave that was just announced, in which the quote that I had put on here, there's a couple that I thought of, but the one that I ended up putting, and I think it might end up being the quote, is bang, boom, shake, clump. Why, hello, everybody. And obviously, Michael impersonates an overweight person, or as he says, a celebration of fat people. And then the next pop, finally, we'll discuss the common Jim Halpert pop, which this is involved in the employee transfer episode in episode 6, because this is actually one of the Halloween episodes, and he's dressed up as a guy named Dave, in which the quote on here is, once again, it's just a random quote, but it's actually the quote he says in the very last episode of The Office, which is, "Everything I have, I owe to this job. This stupid, wonderful, boring, amazing job." Then going along a couple episodes later on the episode titled Moroccan Christmas, which is episode 11, is the Funko Shop exclusive Dwight Schrute with Doll Pop, which the quote on this is, "Every year I do research to determine which toy will be the most popular of the Christmas season. This year it's a doll. Half girl, half unicorn." Obviously, Dwight buys a ton of Princess Unicorn dolls to flip and make profit on the secondary market. Then, a few episodes later, on part 1 of the episode called Stress Relief, which is episode 14, is the FYE exclusive Dwight Schrute with the CPR mask, in which the quote on this pop is, "Check for an organ donor card. If he has one, we only have minutes to harvest." Obviously, in this episode, the Office gets CPR training after Stanley Hudson suffers a heart attack, and Dwight, during the episode, cuts open the CPR mask's face to try and impersonate Hannibal Lecter. Then, going to one of the final episodes, the last 3 pops we're going to talk about for the season are actually from the same episode, the episode titled Casual Friday, which first off, we got the Kevin Malone pop that had came out for the very first wave of Office pops, which the quote on this pop is, "Everybody is going to get to know each other in the pod." And obviously in this episode, right at the beginning, it kicks off. Kevin brings a big pot of chili to work, and then as he's bringing it up to the office, he accidentally trips and spills it all over the floor, and he's trying to clean it up. Then the next pop is the Casual Friday Meredith, which goes with this episode also, when Toby kind of calls out Meredith on how her attire is a little inappropriate. The quote for this pop is actually, "Bunch of prudes." And then the last pop for the season is the Casual Friday Kelly Kapoor, which the quote on this pop is, "I can't believe that Toby thinks this is inappropriate." And obviously this is her outfit that she had worn during the episode. So the Michael Clump pop, I got a bit of chuckles from this. This was a pretty funny episode. I love how Oscar calls him out on like, "Oh, this is Michael Clump." And he's like, "How do you know that?" He's like, "This is your making fun of fat people person." The pop itself is really cool. I love how they made it obviously over white, and then they have the goatee, which kind of stands out. The normal Jim Helper pop, really, really cool. I love how it actually has the Dave thing. And I know a lot of people were complaining like, "Oh, make a normal Jim Helper pop without the Dave thing." And then it's like, this is the thing. Jim Helper, like, it makes sense for him to have that Halloween costume, make it a common, because yeah, you can make him with like a normal office outfit, but it wouldn't be like Jim Helper. The Dwight Schrute Funko Pop. Now, I have started to really appreciate this pop the more that I have it, considering I just recently got it off of eBay. I just love the idea that Funko made a pop of a character who in the episode had bought a bunch of the hottest selling toys and flips them on the secondary market. And for this case, it's a pop of that part of the Funko shop where you know that there's going to be people who are going to flip this pop, and it did happen, on the secondary market to make a profit off of it. I had ended up getting this pop basically from a flipper who got a pop of a flipper. Partly genius on Funko's part that they ended up making this a Funko Shop exclusive so that that would kind of happen. Then we got the Dwight with the CPR mask. I love this scene, and the quote is so perfect. I'm not really the biggest fan of how the mask ended up turning out, though, because I think even you mentioned it kind of looks like Play-Doh or silly putty on his face, but it's still a cool moment, and it's so cool that they ended up making this into Funko Pop form. The Kevin with the chili, that was probably one of the most perfect ways to start off doing a Kevin pop, and there's definitely room for more Kevin pops. Like, oh, there can be so many awesome Kevin Malone pops. The Casual Friday Meredith is so awesome, and I love how they have the pixelated boob there. I think it's just such an awesome touch to it, and it's a great way to kick off a bunch of cool Meredith pops. The Kelly Kapoor, I kind of find pointless, like this version at least, because I felt like they could have done something better, like easy way to introduce two more characters. You could have done a Kelly and Ryan 2-pack, but instead they did a Kelly, but not during one of her better moments, even though Kelly is like one of the most annoying characters throughout that entire series, and I just can't stand her.
Michael Clump is a very funny pop. It's another one of those things where Michael's trying to be funny, but he's really just being an asshole, which is great. I love it. The gym, I agree with some people. I would like to see a normal gym just because it does make sense to have the Dave name tag on there, but I think it would be cool to have a normal gym, even if it is in like a 2-pack with, like, let's say a new Pam Beesly. That'd be fine. I would really enjoy that. And then, yeah, like you said, it's so funny that they ended up having this version of Dwight with the doll on the Funko Shop, and of course everything that happened with it and it going up in price. It just makes so much sense. This pop looks great. It's amazing how they can do these Dwights, and he's holding like another character or figure, and they look so great in Funko Pop form, even though they're very, very tiny, which is so great. Even the box looks really, really great, and that's even sort of popified in a sense. The Dwight with the CPR mask, this is one of my favorite pops from The Office. It does kind of look like silly putty on his face, but in the episode it also kind of just looks like silly putty on his face anyways. The Kevin with the chili is also a great pop. I agree with you totally. There needs to be more Kevin pops. He is one of my favorite characters, probably in my top 5. The chili makes so much sense. It would have been cool if we could have seen a chase version of this pop, though, where the chili is actually spilt. That would have been amazing. The Meredith, it's alright. It is pretty funny, and I do like the idea of how they have her boob pixelated. It's so great, because we've never seen anything like that before with a pop. And then I agree with you 100% that it should have been a Kelly and Ryan 2-pack, the first Kelly that we've seen. I do own this Kelly, but it's just not how you think of Kelly when you think of her, so it's just an alright pop.
All right, so now we're moving on to season 6 of The Office, which aired September 17th, 2009 and ended May 20th, 2010. So a little summary of that season: Jim Halper's promotion to co-manager alongside Michael Scott, Dwight Schrute's anger and jealousy that he was passed over for the co-manager job and his subsequent attempts to sabotage Jim, Jim's wedding to Pam Beesly, Michael Scott engaging in a romantic relationship with Pam's mother, Helene, much to Pam's horror. Dunder Mifflin navigating through the economic crisis. Dunder Mifflin getting bought out by Florida-based printer company Sabre, and the arrival of Sabre's representatives Joe Bennett and Gabe Lewis. Andy Bernard's attempts to court Erin Hannon. Jim and Pam welcoming their first child, Cece, and Dwight and Angela contractually agreeing to have a baby together. So the first pop to kick off season 6 is from the episode titled Niagara Part 2, which was episode 5, and it is one of the newer pops. It is the box lunch exclusive Kevin Malone with the tissue box shoes. I think it's for sure that this is going to be the quote is, "My Kleenex shoes were a huge conversation piece, but man, my dogs are barking." So this is from Pam and Jim's wedding. Kevin, his shoes were like taken by one of the workers and they're supposed to be like clean and polished or whatever. And then they ended up just throwing it in the trash though, because they smelled so bad. So Kevin ended up going to the wedding with tissue box shoes. And then his feet were so sore that he ends up dipping his feet in an ice container in the hotel that they were in. So, and then we move on to about 5 episodes later, the episode titled Shareholder Meeting, which we have the Recyclops Dwight. Now, there's going to be 2 we're obviously talking about. So the first one that was released, Recyclops version 1, which was an Emerald City Comic Con 2020 shared with Walmart exclusive, in which the quote on this box, "Happy Earth Day, everyone. I'm Recyclops. Did you know that an old milk carton can be sawed in half and used as a planter?" Obviously, Recyclops, one of Dwight's famous personas. And then in this episode, there's also 4 more variants, but they have what they call version 2, but I truly think it's version 3, and I'll explain why. This was a San Diego Comic-Con 2020 shared with Walmart exclusive, in which the quote for this pop is, "Who has put a number 7 plastic in a number 4 bin?" Then 2 episodes later was the Christmas episode titled Secret Santa in episode 13, in which it is Dwight Schrute dressed up as the elf, and his quote is, "My diabolical plot is on hold for Christmas. My heart just melts with the sound of children singing." Not really. I'm just tired. The days are short. I don't know. Maybe I'm depressed. And this is where obviously Dwight dresses up as an elf for Christmas, receives a bunch of parts throughout the day for a contraption that must be built, and he ends up thinking it's a gun, but it ends up being a nutcracker instead. And then the last pop to go with this season of season 6 is the Go Games and Toys exclusive Date Mike, which this is from the episode Happy Hour, in which the quote for this pop is, "Hi, I'm Date Mike. Nice to meet me. How do you like your eggs in the morning?" And this is where Michael goes on a double date with Jim and Pam and one of Pam's friends. And Michael doesn't even know at first that he's going on a double date. And then he runs to his car and he puts on this outfit calling himself Date Mike. The Kevin Malone with the tissue box shoes, such a cool pop, and I'm glad that they ended up making this. Is one of those pops where it's like it's such a great moment, but for some reason you didn't think that Funko was just going to randomly like make this pop right now. So I'm glad that they're making this pop. The Recyclops pops, I'll talk about both of them at the same time. Version 1 is amazing. It's so awesome, so much detail, so much different shadings of green. And then you got what they're calling version 2, but it's definitely version 3. And I'm going to show it right now. Obviously, you guys will be viewing what version 2 actually looks like. And it goes with that quote of, "Who has put a number 7 plastic in a number 4 bin?" This pop is version 3. This is the one that comes after what version 2 should be. And the quote that should be for this pop that they're showing right now is, "Recyclops will drown you in your overwatered lawns," which I think was just such an awesome quote compared to, "Who has put a number 7 plastic in a number 4 bin?" I don't know why Funko did that or who was in charge of these pops that were thinking like, all right, this is version 2. Unless they're just entirely skipping version 2 and what would be version 4, and then they'll probably go for 5, or they're probably going to call it version 3, which I'm going to guess that's going to be New York Comic Con in my opinion, but who knows. The Dwight as Elf is also a really cool one. I don't think it was really needed right now, but it's still cool that they did like a mini lineup of like the Christmas variants. The Date Might Pop is so awesome. I love how they ended up having the wink in the eye, because he says the quote and then he tries to wink, but it's like the worst wink ever. He's just like twitching really bad, and it's just so funny. And he's got the pool cue also, and it's a nice touch.
The Kevin Malone with the tissue box shoes is my second favorite Office Pop of all time so far, and that's just because it's one of my favorite scenes in the show. And if the box says anything but the quote you mentioned, that will be such a big disappointment because it is one of my favorite Office quotes. The Recyclops Dwights, they're pretty cool. I do like the version 1 better than the quote-unquote version 2, just because it's a little more simple and it looks really, really good. Whereas the version 2, you wouldn't even be able to tell that was Dwight if you hadn't seen the show before. The Dwight as Elf is a pretty funny pop. It looks alright, and I really like how they did the contraption in his hand, and then he has like another piece to it in his other hand. Date Mike is a amazing pop. The wink was so funny in the show, and it really stands out on this pop, and you could tell that it's kind of like a bad wink. The pool cue is a great touch, and even the hairs on his chest, because Steve Carell in general has a very, very hairy chest.
All right, going on to season 7, the very last season, unfortunately, that we had seen Michael Scott in full time. This aired September 23rd, 2010 to May 19th, 2011. For season 7, we've seen Aaron's relationship with Gabe Lewis. Ryan creates the website woof.com, the return of Holly Flax, the screening of Michael Scott's film Threat Level Midnight, the departure of Michael Scott as he moves to Colorado with Holly, and then several replacements for Michael Scott as regional manager, including D'Angelo Vickers. So I should say the first couple of pops that we'll discuss for this specific episode, because they kind of go hand in hand, actually. First off is Dwight Schrute as the Scranton Strangler, which is in the newest wave that is yet to release as we record this, from the episode Costume Contest, in which the quote that I had guessed for this is, "Too late. If I was the real Scranton Strangler, you would so be strangled by now." And this obviously is the episode where Dwight is dressed up as the serial killer in their city called the Scranton Strangler. And then going along with that episode of Costume Contest, and it's only in there because you actually see a glimpse of it, is the book face Jim Halpert, where his Halloween costume is simply just, the word book on his face, because he's basically spoofing the social networking site Facebook, obviously. The book face was actually a deleted scene in the previous season. Like, there was like a Halloween segment that got cut from the show because of something that Michael did in the episode. But you do get to see, because Jim was talking about the different Halloween costumes that he's had, because in this episode, I think Pam is trying to get him to dress up as Popeye, but he's not having it. And so they get to show like the different costumes he had. So he had the 3-hole punch, the Dave, and then they show Bookface. The quote on here is actually the same one as the original Jim Halpert, which makes sense because this is the chase version of the original Jim Halpert pop. Then 3 episodes later, on the episode titled Woof.com, we have the Walmart exclusive Hey King Dwight, in which the quote for this pop is, "I always wanted to be Hey King, but the world shines on Moe's." And this episode, Dwight hosts a Hay Carnival with activities to see who would become the Hay King, but obviously it was just a huge setup so that Dwight would end up crowning himself the Hay King. And then the next 2 pops are from the very same episode, episode 11, titled Classy Christmas Part 1, in which we have here first the Michael Scott as Classy Santa. So the quote on this pop is, "Man, I worked so hard for this, and know who I end up owing this to is the Scranton Strangler. Thank you. Thank you, Scranton Strangler. I love you. You just took one more person's breath away." And this episode is the episode where it's announced that Toby has to go to jury duty because he is actually a part of that case with the Scranton Strangler. Michael ends up finding out that Toby is going to be replaced by the return of Holly Flax, coming back to the Scranton branch as HR. And Michael Scott, instead of dressing up as a normal Santa Claus, he wants to be classy. So he makes his own version of Santa Claus where he's wearing like a classy suit and trying to impress Holly with her return. And then with that same episode, actually, exactly on part 1 is the upcoming Funko Shop exclusive, Dwight Schrute dressed up as Pam Beesly. The quote that I had predicted for this, and I think it's the only quote possible for this and any other pops that they plan on doing where it's Dwight dressed up as an office employee, is, "Yes, I have a wig for every person in the office. You never know when you're going to need to bear a passing resemblance to someone." And obviously this is where Dwight dresses up as Pam to fool Jim and throw a bunch of snowballs at him. 2 more pops that actually go in the same episode also, and it's actually one of my favorite episodes throughout the series, and that is episode 17, titled Threat Level Midnight. The first one we're talking about is the upcoming Go Games and Toys exclusive Michael Scarn. The quote that I'm going to predict for this is, looks like there's going to be a cleanup on aisle 5. Obviously, Michael Scarn is the protagonist in Michael Scott's movie Threat Level Midnight, which obviously Threat Level Midnight, it's literally a knockoff James Bond movie. So he's literally supposed to be James Bond at this point. And then it goes with one of the first ever exclusive pops that came out. It was the Target exclusive Golden Face Jim, which actually has one of the best quotes that I can't believe they actually put on the boxes, which the quote is, "Oh, someone's coming, all right. The only man who would care, Michael Scarn. See, I'm going to lure him here. Then I kill everybody. Then I'm going to dig up Scarn's dead wife and I'm going to hump her real good." So obviously, Golden Face Jim is the antagonist in Michael Scott's movie Threat Level Midnight. I can't exactly remember. Isn't it Goldeneye for James Bond? That's what they're, instead of Goldeneye, it's Golden Face. I kind of figured that. The Scranton Strangler Dwight is actually really good, honestly. It honestly reminds me of the wrestler Repo Man.
Yes.
It gives me those vibes, and that's probably why I love it so much. The Bookface Jim, I actually, once again, this was what happened when the series first came out, and I watched it through. I did not remember seeing Bookface, and then when the pops came out, I was like, what the heck? Bookface? I've never seen that, and it's because it's a deleted scene. So after I'd caught that, I was like, Bookface Jim mentioned on the show. The Hey King Dwight is one of those pops I don't have yet for some reason, but this is a really cool Dwight pop, and I love how he has the paper and he has the microphone basically about to announce that he's going to crown himself Hey King. The Michael Scott Classy Santa, that one's all right. It's not one of my favorite Michael Scotts, but it's pretty cool. After rewatching the Dwight Schrute as Pam Beesly scene, I love this pop so much because that scene was just amazing. And then the Threat Level Midnight pops, which, like I mentioned when these pops were first announced, like just the Threat Level Midnight Michael Scarn pop, I find it kind of weird that they use like finger guns instead of real guns, especially because the Golden Face actually has a gun. I thought that this was from the scene where they're playing that Clue game that for some reason, even though watching it again, I can't remember the name of it. And then they have the finger guns near the end where it's like 4 people seeing who'd kill who first. But it's still cool that they're expanding on Threat Level Midnight because I feel like they obviously can do this pop and then the Golden Face, but then also I can't wait until they make a Dwight Schrute as the butler, because that's also another pop they can do for the Threat Level Midnight portion of The Office. But one thing that really ticks me off is that I love how they made a Threat Level Midnight box for the Michael Scarn that's coming out. But I hate how they didn't think of that for the Golden Face Jim, because now I feel like there's going to be so many people, possibly myself included, who's going to have some sort of OCD involved. Let's say if you have these pops together, which the thing is that they already have a different box art for like 2 different series. And then to add a third one is just going to throw me off though. I feel like Golden Face Jim might actually be, now as I think about it, might actually be my favorite variant of Jim in the series. I just really enjoyed Golden Face Jim very much.
The Scranton Strangler, that was an alright episode. I didn't mind that. The Facebook Jim, as I like to call it, is another great pop, and I do own this pop thanks to Top Pops. I'm so happy to have it in my collection. Jim is obviously my favorite character. I love this, and it's so cool that it's kind of a deleted scene moment, and it's actually turned into a pop, which is great. The Hey King Dwight, this is an amazing pop. There's a lot of detail in it, and the episode was really great, too. Makes a lot of sense that Dwight would name himself Hey King. The classy Michael Scott, or Classy Santa, it is an alright pop, I guess. I'm kind of surprised that they made this pop so early, but it's an alright one, and I do own that one as well. Dwight as Pam, this is hilarious. The snowballs look great, and the hair is so funny. You wouldn't even be able to tell that this is Dwight if you haven't seen the show, and it kind of does look like Pam a little bit, but obviously in Dwight's version. Michael Scarn is great, and it is weird that he's doing the finger guns, and it is very weird that they did the Threat Level Midnight box, which I like, but like you said, it's going to be weird to display them, and then of course, Golden Face Jim doesn't have that box, so like, oh, it's just going to be such a struggle. I'm already not too happy with them switching the boxes from the first boxes they had into the new boxes. I do like the new boxes, but it just sucks. I want everything to kind of look uniform, and that's not going to happen, especially with a Threat Level Midnight box coming up. And yeah, you're correct. This golden face gym is amazing. I'm not surprised that it's your favorite gym because it looks amazing. The gun looks pretty cool. He even has the hockey puck in his hand, which is hilarious. I love it.
All right, so now we're moving on to the second last season of The Office, season 8, which aired September 22nd, 2011, and had ended May 10th, 2012. So the summary for season 8, Robert California becomes CEO of Sabre with Andy Bernard as regional manager of Dunder Mifflin. Pam is pregnant with her second child. Dwight Schrute has appendicitis. Andy and Aaron get back together, and then David Wallace buys Dunder Mifflin from Sabre. And the only pop that actually is in this set, there's only one pop for season 8, and that is the Florida Stanley pop, which was from the episode Special Project, episode 14, in which the quote on this pop is, Florida Stanley smiles. Florida Stanley is happy to go to work. Florida Stanley is who you want on your Florida team. And this episode, corporate contacts Andy on letting him know they're having some sort of, I think, conference to be like a VP of Sabre. So they want to send a few of the Dunder Mifflin employees out, and Stanley with this outfit that he has for the Funko Pop, which the pop looks pretty good, honestly. Do I wish, though, that this was the second Stanley Pop that they had made after the Pretzel Day? Not really. I wish that they had made the Stanley Pop where he's wearing the sumo outfit from like season, I think it was 3 or 4, one of those seasons, which was a great moment for Stanley. But this is still a cool one, and it's a good way to introduce pops for the later season, because obviously there's only a total of 3 pops we're going to be talking about throughout season 8 and season 9.
Yeah, I really love Florida Stanley. I thought his character, when he went to Florida, he's like trying to pick up chicks with like he's with like Jim, right? They're driving in the car.
Yeah, they have that fancy car.
Yeah, and then he's like saying to the chicks that are beside them in the other car that they should like go to the bar or whatever. I thought that was pretty funny, and I do like this pop. I would kind of agree that maybe a sumo one would have been better, or one pop that I am going to talk about later, but I'm going to save that.
And then season 9, it aired September 20th, 2012, and had ended May 16th, 2013. It was the last season, which the summary for this season, Andy Bernard is gone for 3 months on a boat cruise. The senator is having an affair with Oscar. Jim and Pam having marriage problems. Aaron leaving Andy for Pete. The airing of the documentary, and then the wedding of Dwight and Angela with the return of Michael Scott as the best man. So there's only 2 pops for this season of The Office, season 9, which the first one, God, I can't remember the episode name now, but it was a Christmas episode, and it is the Dwight Schrute as Belsnickel pop. The quote for this pop is, "The Belsnickel would decide if you're impish or admirable." Dwight dresses up as Belsnickel, which, for those that may not know, it is the German folklore that is equivalent to Santa Claus. So he's basically the German version of Santa Claus in this scene, and it's such a funny scene involving the Belsnickel, and it's definitely one of my favorite Dwight Schrute pops, definitely in the top 5. And then the pop that's actually in the second last episode of the series, the episode titled AARM, is the Jim Halpert with the nonsense sign that's actually coming out for the new wave, in which I could not figure out a quote. Obviously, in this episode, Dwight at this point is the regional manager of Dunder Mifflin since Andy left to go pursue a career in singing and acting. And then Jim is now the assistant to the regional manager, which is what Dwight technically was when Michael was in charge as regional manager. So the pops here, like I said, I love the Belsnickel Dwight. I think it's so good, and I love kind of the scuffs underneath Dwight's eyes to make him look dirty. He's got the whip. He's got like kind of like the sticks that are tied together to use as kind of a weapon, which he hits Jim a bunch of times. I think they did such a great job with this pop. And once again, it's a pop for some reason I don't have. The Office has been a struggle for me to go and collect because there's just so many. The nonsense Jim, or I should say Jim with the nonsense sign, I think it's all right. A lot of people don't like the fact that Jim has this like short hair and it's not like his long hair, but at the same time, he literally cut his long hair in, I think, season 7. So he's had short hair since then. So it makes sense that they have the shorter hair instead of the long straggly hair now. But it does kind of throw me off. Like if I look at this, let's say if it was just a normal pop and it didn't have that nonsense sign, I probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was Jim. But it is cool that they're doing later season Jims now.
Impish! The Belsnickel is awesome. You're right. This has got to be one of the best Dwight pops. There's so many details going on with it, whether it's like the texture of the fur or the little belt buckle and all the different layers of clothing he has on, really. And then even on his hat, he's got the leaves and like the shrubbery. And then, of course, yeah, there's even two things in his hands. His face is kind of dirty. The beard looks great. And even his like facial reaction, I guess, looks so good as well. The Jim is a little bit weird to see one with his short hair just because it doesn't really look like Jim that much compared to how much the other Jims really do look like Jim, I guess would be the best way to put it.
All right, so now, like every fandom-related podcast, we talk about what Funko Pops we want to see in said lineup. So this case, what Funko Pops we want to see next in The Office, which obviously, let's start out with you, MD. What Pops do you want to see next in The Office lineup?
I got a lot of different names on here. So I'm not going to go with like characters like Oscar and Phyllis and people like that that don't have a pop yet because I'm sure that they will get one eventually. The first big one, which is the one I was talking about earlier that I was going to say for now, is Stanley playing basketball where he's like dribbling so weird. And if they could make a pop where he's actually dribbling the basketball like that, oh, that'd be amazing. Another one that I wanted to see, Dwight with the bazooka. I believe that's like
Yeah,
it's like the last episode
that's
or
the
the
last
second to last
episode. That's
episode.
part of
Yeah,
his
okay.
like bachelor party.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great pop. Todd Packer, amazing actor and also an amazing pop, I think it would be. And then I guess I'll go on to the idea that I was telling you about a couple days ago. If they made a huge set of pops where it's a build an office, where basically you have characters like Michael, Dwight, Jim, Pam, Stanley, Phyllis, Kevin, Angela, Oscar, Meredith, Kelly, and Toby. I know it's a lot, but could you just imagine where you have them all with their desk and then they all kind of like the floorboards or the bases of them connect together so you could build the whole office environment? I think that would be so amazing, and I think Funko could really pull it off. And then the last pop that I would like to see, Andy Bernard when he comes back from his trip on the boat where he has like the beard and he's got like the dreadlocks and all that. That would be an amazing pop.
Technically, only one pop that you had mentioned was actually on my list. Kicking off with season 1, I had written a 3-pack of Michael, Dwight, and Stanley when they're playing basketball. So it would be Michael Scott with his like gym shorts and outfit and that. Dwight with that like 2011 Cody Rhodes-esque mask that he has on.
Yeah.
And then Stanley, and positioned in the box would be him with his arm out doing the weird dribble. Season 2. So season 2 was actually a pop you kind of mentioned a while back, like off camera. But I would love to see a pop of a Dundee Award. You just make a gold like business person,
Yeah.
make it a 6-inch pop so that it's kind of like an award more than a pop. You would have a base with it also that obviously says Dundee Award, and it's just a gold pop. For season 3, I had chose Dwight as Jim Halpert, which was like a little clip in that episode where Jim dressed up as Dwight, and he's all like, "I'm Jim, I'm so cool." I think that would be awesome if they actually made that pop eventually. Season 4, I have to go with the Utica Takeover 3-pack. Oh my God, that scene was amazing, and I can't wait until they make pops of that. Season 5, I picked a 2-pack of Michael and Holly. It would be a cool way to introduce Holly, and I think they can have a cool variant of Michael. Season 6 is another 2-pack, and I think this would be really, really cool, is a Jim Halpert and Pam when they're getting married. And you can have the Jim pop with his tie cut off. And then I can't remember the name for some reason. The thing that Pam wears and it ripped also, which is why Jim had cut off his tie. I think that'd be really, really cool. Season 7, I had written Ryan Howard just because of Woof.com. I think something to involve Ryan, and then the quote involves Woof.com. Season 8, I wrote Robert California just because why not? It's a new character, and he has the most random quotes that, like, I think any of the quotes he would say would be so weird and funny to have on that box. Season 9, my most requested pop for The Office happens in season 9, and it is Asian Jim. Oh my God. That moment was so good. One of Jim's best pranks in the entire series. Oh my God. But you know what? To hell with it. I'll mention one more pop. Meredith when half her head is shaved bald. I thought about the entire bald head Meredith, but it would be funnier to have like when the first part of her head is shaved and you have the hair going on the sides. I think that would be nuts as a Funko Pop.
Yeah, that's funny that you said that, because that is another one I have on here, is Bald Meredith. But I never thought of just having it where there's like only a little bit of it shaved off. Really good idea.
All right, guys, so that's going to be the end of this week's podcast. If you enjoyed this office edition of a Funko Popcast, make sure you smash that like button. Comment in the comment section below on what Funko Pops you want to see next in the office lineup. Press the subscribe button for more content like this podcast and any other videos we do on this channel in the future. And press the little bell beside it to be notified of when that future content gets released. And if you haven't yet, follow us on all of our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at a Funko Popcast. It'll be listed in the description below. But anyways, guys, thank you for listening to this edition of a Funko Popcast, and we hope to see you guys next week. 1, 2, 3, I'm out of here.
Peace in, peace out.